Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, picture this. It's finals week. The stress is already literally off the charts. Students are cramming, teachers are frantically finalizing grades, and then, boom, the systems just go dark. No exams, no assignments, zero communication. Just a complete digital blackout. Now, that is exactly the high-stakes reality that thousands of students across North America were hit with during the recent Canvas cyber attack. But as we're going to see today, that temporary classroom blackout, well, it was really just the tip of the iceberg in a much larger and honestly far more concerning story about our educational infrastructure.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to stop and really think about something for a second. Do you know who actually holds your digital school records right now? I mean, we send our kids to school, we log into these massive cloud platforms every single day, and we kind of just assume that all this incredibly sensitive, deeply personal data is locked away in some impenetrable digital vault, right? Well, as the Canvas breach brutally showed us, making that assumption is pretty dangerous. So let's unpack what actually went down.
So, part one, the incident. Let's look at the sheer disruption that unfolded during finals week. The core problem here was a massive breach by a ransomware group called ShinyHunters. And look, they didn't just hack a website, they essentially hijacked the critical infrastructure of schools across North America, literally at the worst possible time of the year. Now, what's really wild is the sheer scale of what they actually grabbed. We're not talking about a couple of misplaced passwords here. These hackers walked away with full names, email addresses, student IDs, and detailed course enrollment data. But honestly, the most shocking thing, billions, yes, literally billions with a B, of private messages. Just like that, the entire digital footprint of a student's educational life was sitting right in the hands of cybercriminals.
So, faced with this catastrophic exposure, Canvas did what? Well, what a lot of desperate organizations do. They paid up. They paid an undisclosed ransom to the attackers, and in return for that cash, they got a digital confirmation, claiming that all the stolen records were destroyed and completely unrecoverable. Sounds like a huge sigh of relief, right? Like, okay, crisis averted, the data is gone. But this sets up a really harsh reality check. I mean, can we actually take cybercriminals at their word? Which brings us to part two, the ransom illusion, or what we should really call the myth of deletion. We really need to unpack why trusting criminals gives institutions and, frankly, families a dangerously false sense of security. On the one hand, you have the hacker's promise, right? Their whole business model relies on convincing victims that if you just pay up, it minimizes the harm and the problem magically disappears. But the harsh reality? Criminals like ShinyHunters are in this purely for the profit. Once that data leaves the building, it passes through so many hands. It gets duplicated, it's stored away by affiliates in the dark corners of the web, and more often than not, it resurfaces months or even years later for round two of extortion.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. Just look at the Power School precedent. We don't even have to guess if hackers are going to break their promises. History proves it. Hackers were reportedly paid their ransom in that case, but guess what? They turned right around and started extorting thousands of school districts all over again. The takeaway here? Paying a ransom doesn't actually buy you security. It just buys you a very, very temporary silence.
All right, moving on to part three, a single point of failure, and the real vulnerability of our modern cloud ecosystem. This whole situation exposes a massive structural flaw in how we handle education today. Think about it, we've basically taken the entire school experience and centralized it. 8,000, just let that number sink in for a second. That is the number of schools representing literally millions of students and teachers that were left completely exposed by this one single attack. To put that into perspective, when a platform like Canvas goes down, it's not just a minor glitch. It's a centralized pillar of the modern classroom completely collapsing all at once. And notice how this failure just completely cascades through the entire system. Because Canvas acts as the classroom, the gradebook, the messaging app, and the exam portal all rolls into one giant package, a single breach causes total systemic paralysis. Students, totally blocked from taking their finals. Teachers, locked out of their coursework, unable to grade anything. And administrators are left completely blind, scrambling to manage a massive fallout they have absolutely no control over. The concentration of all these essential functions on one single platform just raises the stakes to an incredibly dangerous level.
Next up, part four, real threats to privacy and the long tail of harm.
Because we have to ask, what happens after the systems finally come back online and the news cycle just moves on to the next thing? So the crucial point is that this exposed data gets weaponized. Even if financial data wasn't the main target, just having a list of names, emails, and student IDs creates an immediate, real-world risk of identity theft. Hackers use this stuff to craft highly targeted social engineering attacks, basically tricking parents and school staff into handing over even more sensitive info. They combine this leaked data with public sources to build these incredibly detailed, dangerous profiles of minors. And those billions of archived messages we mentioned earlier, that creates a long tail of harm, setting the stage for exploitation and extortion months, or honestly, even years down the line. Finally, Part 5, Protecting the Classroom, the Future Blueprint. Look, we just cannot accept this as the new normal. If paying ransoms is basically just slapping a temporary Band-Aid on a gaping wound, what is the actual future blueprint for robust educational security? Well, let's move to these 5 layers of defense, because schools simply can't rely on a single vendor's promise anymore. Number 1, implement backup plans and redundancy. Schools absolutely must have offline alternatives so learning can actually continue during an outage. 2, enforce data minimization. Stop hoarding every single piece of student data on one platform. Only keep what is absolutely essential for the day-to-day. 3, and this is a massive one, demand independent verification. If a vendor says data is destroyed, prove it. Do a full forensic audit. 4, run realistic incident response drills, just like a fire drill, so everyone from teachers to IT staff knows exactly what to do when the system crashes. And lastly, maintain transparent, open communication with families about what is actually happening with their kids' personal data. If you take away anything from this explainer today, let it be this. Data protection is a continuous obligation, not a one-time business transaction. The education ecosystem absolutely has to demand independent verification to truly rebuild trust. We can't just pay a ransom, cross our fingers, and, hope the criminals suddenly grew a conscience. So I want to leave you with this final thought. How is your school preparing for the next breach? Because let's be real, there will be a next one. What contingency plans are in place right now to ensure teaching continues? And how are they actively building trust in your community? Don't wait for the next digital blackout to start asking these questions. Start demanding lasting protections today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.